Well, thank you very much to all of you for joining us. So this afternoon, this workshop is about how to scale up your business and also which techniques generate the greatest ROI and why. So to start off with, I'd like to introduce my way of seeing the world, which is looking at the world across three horizons, which are today, tomorrow, and the future. Now, like most business people, I imagine you spend most of your time focused in today. And for us, today is all about where we generate our revenues. So we focus on generating revenues, paying our bills, making sure that by the year end, we have generated sufficient profit in a tax efficient way to enable us to go home and say to our partners, look how well I did. And at the when they hear how well you've done, what typically is the way they respond to you, having shared the fact that you've generated some profit and that extension to the house, possibly the holiday, or at the very least a nice dinner. Typically, what do they say to you? So would anybody like to speak up and have a go at telling me how they respond to you?
Is that all?
Is that all? Oh, I wouldn't want to live your life. Anyone else?
Well done.
Well done. What else? Okay, well, if those two are sufficient, well done. And what is the implication for next year?
More of the same.
Go away and do it again.
Who better?
So that helps to focus people on doing more of the stuff that is to do with revenues. But actually, we are all working through a time horizon, a series of time horizons, through tomorrow, which in my world is all about designing the resources that are going to enable you to grow your business and scale your business into a future which you may or may not have defined. So how many of you have actually gone through the process of designing what it is you think you're building? And by design, I mean putting in place the plans to cover every facet of how you are building your enterprise. Well, that's a great response. And what about the future? How many of you have focused on what future it is you are choosing to build? Okay, so I'm going to start making these rhetorical questions on the basis of the responses so far. So we work across these three horizons. But there is a common view of the future, which is, I know where I am today, and the future feels like a long way away. And as a result, the gap seems too great to bridge and limits the scope for people making the iterative changes they need to make in order to reach their chosen future. So I can't plan for or change for what I can't see. But if you bridge the gap by putting in place the plans and the resources that enable you to create your future, it becomes something that is entirely realizable. And as Anthony said, my focus is on helping people to realize the value in their business, whatever that looks like for them. So taking a look at it in a different form, we have the three areas, which are value, which I call direction, where you choose your direction and you design the direction that your business is going to take. resources, which is all about designing the infrastructure that's going to enable you to take those progressive steps in scaling your business. And the third area, which is revenues, which actually deliver the revenue and profit that enable you to realize your value. And these operate across those 3 time horizons. Now, what I'm going to do now is to break out the 20 different areas of focus which I use to help businesses to focus on how to scale their business and grow their revenues. So if we start at 12 o'clock, the first thing is having a clear vision and purpose. The second is having a strategic direction plan or business plan or scale-up plan that enables you to map out every step from where you are now to where it is you want to end up. The next one is designing how you are going to build equity value as you generate revenue and profit. Too many people suddenly think 5 years off retirement, I probably am going to want to sell this business one day. And then think, well, what have I done to achieve that so far? In general, it's rather too late. But if you start to build the equity value metrics into your business very early on in the process, the probability is you will generate more revenue and profit along the way. The next thing is, how do you align your stakeholders? So the other people you want to come on the journey with you. Moving into the design area, it's all about how you deploy and design how you deploy your human resources and the other resources available to your business. The next one is to do with the abilities of your management team to run the business and also generate those profits you want to generate. Do you innovate? Do you have an innovation plan? What's your product development or portfolio plan? What's the performance of your product or service like? When did you last evaluate it for quality delivery? And the other 4 around this outside loop are, do you have a brand that works for you? Have you developed channels to market? How effectively do you convert sales? And what's your customer retention like? Now, typically, if someone has a problem, say, in the sales area, they will go out and they will hire someone to help them with sales. But 9 times out of 10, the product doesn't start there, or the problem, rather, doesn't start there. So if your sales aren't working, the probability is you haven't set up the right channels to help you to find those sales opportunities and indeed to pre-sell them. Or it could be that your brand doesn't properly represent your product, or that the quality of what you deliver is deficient, or that it's out of date, or that you don't actually have the abilities within your team to manage those things. Or you may never have put people in those places to manage those facets of your business. Or you might have had them, but you didn't align them as stakeholders, so they didn't stay, because they didn't have confidence in the equity value that they were going to participate in, because they weren't confident in the plans you had developed to build your business, because you didn't have a clear vision and purpose in the first place. So what I've just done is to wind the clock back. And actually, everything tends to revolve around 3 of these key areas: vision and purpose, which is the first in the direction area; how you deploy your resources, which is the first in the design area; and your brand, and how effective your brand is in reflecting and presenting your business and its offer to the market. Now, around the inside, there are another 8 areas, which are much more like the bearings that enable you to do all the things that you need to do around the outside. And if you see in the middle, there is a drive hub. Now, if the sorry, the dog is obviously the dog is obviously chasing the postman. So the first of these is decision making, understanding business cycles, managing culture. How many businesses have you encountered that have a poor culture? Generally, that's because they have the culture they deserve, not the one they chose, because they didn't specifically choose the culture in the first place. How do you manage risk and change? How effective is your communication? How good are you at managing changes in pace and momentum? How good are you at building teams and generating trust? And finally, how broad are your leadership skills? I remember when I started work, which was some time ago now, I had to call all my seniors, bar the people at immediately the next rung, sir. They were all ex-army, and they had one style of leadership, which was based on the army approach. And I didn't stay more than 6 years because actually it didn't suit me. And leadership is all about who you are leading. So just a quick skim around those areas, and I'm now going to get into the core of the workshop. So the first area I'd like to look at is purpose, which is all about the company's vision. Now, I look at this from the perspective of you have your 3 areas: direction, design, and delivery. But the establishment of the business starts off with something very personal. It's desire. And it is the desire to create something that creates the momentum to start a business and choose a direction, and the direction that the shareholders are able to give to the board of directors to pursue. The next one is need. Now, need is all about, well, rather than just having the burning desire to create a better mousetrap, I've decided I need the money. Or I know the market needs this. And so the business purpose starts from a different point of motivation, which is need, which implies you go straight into the design area ahead of the direction area. And then the next area is abilities. Now, those abilities, the abilities you have developed over your career, enable you to deliver product that generates revenue, product or service, to your clients. And you might start a business starting off with, well, I have these abilities, and where can I deliver them? Where can I use them? Ideally, if you're starting up a business, if it's more than just you, you should have one person who is driven by desire, one by need, and one by their abilities. And I will come on to explain why that works. But if we then go into the direction area and specifically business purpose, people tend to use a number of words around vision. Vision, mission, purpose, whatever. But unless you define these, it's very unclear about what it is you are talking about. And so I have defined these in very specific ways. So vision is about the income you are choosing to build, the level of income, the level of profit, the assets you want to create, over the timeline of your business. And the timeline. How many months, years, decades, lifetimes do I want to develop this business over? Have you ever noticed that if you get up in the morning and you have plenty of time to get to your desk or get to your office and start work, how you end up doing stuff and you get to your office? But if the alarm goes off late, have you noticed you're able to do most of those things in the half hour that you have, as opposed to the 1.5 hours that you might normally allow? Now, without choosing a timeline, everything will just take as long as it takes. It will drift. So this is why actually choosing your timeline is really important. So I distinguish mission from vision as being, well, how big do I want this business to be? How many staff? How many offices? How many markets? How many products? How wide? How many offices? How many continents? And then delivery focus. What is it and who is it that I want to focus on for my clients? Do I want one or do I want a number? And then the final area is much more personal. This is about the personal fulfillment, the personal realization of the value from one's business, and the culture in which one wants to work and the way one wants to work with one's colleagues. Too many people spend a lifetime building a business, and at the end of that business, whether they sell it or not, realizing they've had a pretty miserable time. And they generally have a pretty miserable time because they haven't chosen something else. And generally, if they have a miserable time, most of the people in their business are having a miserable time. So if we go to the next level of detail about business purpose and how you plan a business, there are 6 key areas. So it's about brand qualities, it's about culture, it's about the abilities of the management or leadership team to grow the business. And it's about 3 other areas: scale, multiply, and the cycles that are dictated by the sentiments in the business. Now, today, I'm going to look at, in depth, how to scale a business, how when you scale your business is critical to scaling success, and how scale and the techniques you use to scale your business, how they help to increase the multiple you may achieve on selling your business. And then once one has developed one's business purpose and vision, it's something one needs to go back to periodically. I was talking to my son a day or so ago, and we were talking about a colleague of his who runs a festivals business. And it is obvious that he has outgrown his original vision, if he had one, and has lost a sense of purpose for what he wants to do now. So in other words, he's stuck because he hasn't chosen the next part of the journey. And we always need something ahead of us. But most people are either scared to go there or just don't think that it's important. So I'm now going to move on to discuss the first of those 3 areas, which revolves around the core topic for this workshop, which is, how do you scale your business? So How many of you have a clear idea about what scaling
Oh,
means?
okay, sweetie.
Oh, someone spoke.
All right, I'm on a conference call at the moment, so
I was hoping someone to answer whether somebody would answer my
half an
question.
hour to go, but don't worry.
So, how many of you could define scale?
Well, no, I mean, I'm
Would
almost
someone
at the
like to have a
point
go?
where I think this particular call sequence is not.
Okay, no one's going to have a go. So,
Doubling your business. How about that?
sorry? Doubling your
Doubling your
business?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll have a go. I would suggest it's being able to increase the business by an order of magnitude, depending upon what your original vision and outcome is.
Okay. So when you say grow, what do you mean?
Grow means from where you are to get into where you want to be.
Okay, very
So
good.
in terms of revenue or profitability, whichever metric you're wanting to use to define that,
Okay.
that's something that you're going to grow against.
Anyone else? Or are we happy to go with those two? Okay, I'll move on. So when I talked about the end of the year, typically this is how most people look at their business. So we've got resources, revenues, and profits. The resources enable you to generate your revenues, and these two look as if they're generating a nice, healthy profit. And the first column is what I've got today in this calendar year or this financial year, and tomorrow is next year. And this is fulfilling one's partner's requirement for you to go off and do it again. But in my world, this is not enough. So I define the revenue split or the activity of a business around the idea of a cup. So here we have a cup, and the level of revenue and profit in the cup represents your current productivity and the current level of effectiveness of your business. But as you can see, at the top, you have the maximum productivity that the business can generate. And clearly this business is underperforming. And I define growth as being the process of closing that productivity gap to generate more revenue and then profit. Okay so far?
Mm-hmm.
So when we go into that in more detail, people tend to know their current productivity in terms of their revenue and their profit. But they tend not to know what that represents as a percentage of the maximum productivity they could generate. So it's all very well, for instance, for you to benchmark your company or your business against what is published as the best of breed in your sector. But how do you know whether that best of breed is any good in its own right? All you know is they're better than most other people. And it's not a definitive way of measuring how good a business is. So you see, we have the maximum productivity at 100%, but actually you have to discount that by the 10 to 20% of available time and use of resources, represented by all the variables that, or uncontrollable things, that tend to hold us back. Now, most people don't calculate to use that, or to calculate to use that 10 or 20%, because they don't recognize that these things will always happen. You will always you will all have experienced the rigors of COVID. That was a variable. You'll probably be experiencing the frustration from rail strikes or the people protesting on the motorways. Those are variables. Other variables are the 10 or 15 things or emails that you get on a Monday morning that completely reshape your plan for the week or the month or indeed the year. Staff are an enormous contributor to the variables because they always have problems, and problems they're looking to you as business owners to solve. So typically, one can never utilize the 100%. One can only ever utilize up to 80% reliably. So if this is what we mean by grow, which is closing the productivity gap, what do we mean by scale? So scale is increasing the productive resources to generate greater revenues and profits in your business. So specifically, it's about enlarging the size of the cup, not filling it with more liquid. Once you have scaled up to a larger cup, you will see that it has the effect of reducing the amount of revenue in the next cup, in which case one has to go through the next phase of growth and improving productivity before one scales up to the next level. I hope all of this is making sense and that I'm explaining it okay to you. So moving on, if scale is increasing the productive resources to generate greater revenues and profits, and growing is closing the productivity gap, and run rate is the percentage of capacity that you are using, you then get into a discussion about, well, what percentages do I choose? So typically when you start off a business, your cup is not that great and the run rate is not very great. Typically, a business that is generating, that has a run rate of less than 40% will have cash flow problems. But there are strategies that would enable you to, say, grow from 40% up to 70%, and then flip into the next cup by scaling your business, and then taking it down to 40 again, and perhaps up to 70%. And that, in terms of strategy, I would call a 40-70 strategy. If, however, you're lucky enough to have bags of money and capital behind your business, you could go for a different strategy, which would be, I'm going to start my business, I'm going to grow the run rate to 20%, and then I'm going to double the size of the business. So the run rate in the next cup is 10%, and then grow it to 20% again, and then flip again. Now, that's what I call a fast scale strategy, because you're not taking very much time for building each level of magnitude. But if you're seeking to achieve market share, this is probably the best sort of strategy for you to apply. But the other thing is, I would ask you, if you think about what it feels like to have a business with a run rate of only 10%. It's like buying a house on a 10% mortgage. Sorry, a 90% mortgage, where you have only 10% of the equity. How intimidating is that? So actually, the choices you make around scaling your business, you can think of as being very much like the feelings connected with buying real estate and the amount of money you have to borrow to enable you to scale your business. So I promised I would tell you what are the 5 or 6 key strategies that will help you to scale your business. In ascending order, so working at the bottom, is the first is market segmentation. So looking at your market, looking at your client base, and working out who are the 80% of your clients who you don't make much profit from and use up all your time, and who are the 20% of your clients who are the most profitable. This is called the Pareto principle. Also, looking to see whether you can stream your clients into bronze, silver, or gold. So actually you have a clear recognition of the value of your clients within your portfolio and what value they bring to you. Now, by doing a market segmentation exercise, you can begin the process of inviting your clients to move from one level, bronze, up to silver, and the equivalent from silver up to gold, which in turn helps you to scale your business up, because without taking on any more staff, you are making your business capable of generating increased productive work to generate revenue and profit for your business. The next one is physical scaling, which is the one that people think of. So I'm going to double my business. But that is physically taking on more staff, taking on more plant, taking on more premises. And of all of these 6, that is the most costly. The next one is what I call bundle, which is all about pricing and packaging strategies, and how you manage the process of pricing. So when was the last time any of you, except if you're in groceries and food, increased the prices of your product or service? By increasing your prices by 10% across the board, that will have the process, that'll have the effect of increasing the amount of revenue you are able to generate given the same resources. So it's a scaling strategy. The next one is innovation, introducing new and better product, introducing new and better services, which will enable you to generate more revenue from existing customers and potentially open up new markets, which leads us on to channel. So one's channels to market have a significant effect on enabling you to generate more revenue and profit because you are selling more. And typically this is about creating the channels to market that mean you are able to pull sell rather than push sell. So your customers come to you rather than you're having to chase customers all the time. But the one at the top, the one that generates the highest ROI in every sense for your business, is developing your brand and being clear about what it is you want to be known for doing really, really well. Now, most businesses, I find, are they promote what is an indistinct and incomplete representation of their business into the market. And typically they find as a result that they're not getting the clients they want because they're not focusing or haven't decided upon the people who they really, really want as clients. It's all too easy to take whoever turns up, but that's going to limit your business and your ability to scale very significantly. And then over time, you can scale your business. But again, the time scale here is down to you. It's down to you and the choices you make, always recognizing that each of the choices you make will make you feel differently about your business. Which leads me on to the next area, which I call cycles. So a typical company life cycle, which is based on the product life cycle, looks like this: startup, growth, maturity, and decline. It's a bit like the ages of man. The closer you get to the end of the race, you're into decline. And one hopes that at maturity, one achieves peak revenue and peak profit. But for a company, there is another option, which is actually to grow to another level of maturity and not move into decline. And this is because typically a company is not necessarily limited to one person's life cycle. And if you want to build a business that you can pass on to your successors, whether they be family or not, it's important to build into the infrastructure of your business and the skills in your business to build and maintain maturity. So looking at this another way, you start off with creation, and then there is what I call a progression point, a pivot point that enables you to flip into the growth phase in terms of revenue and scaling your business. And then typically the business will hit another progression point, which is one where it needs to reinvent itself, because the infrastructure in the business needs to be redeveloped, rechanneled in order for it to be fit for the next part of the journey. And that leads to another progression point that flips the business into maturity. And this cycle is not one that a business goes through just once. For businesses that have been going 50 or more years, they go through these cycles a number of times. I remember working with a firm of accountants who were on the fringes of the city, outside near the Barbican. And they were in their fifth process of recreation. They'd been founded in the 1880s. And so you can imagine how many people and how many management teams had been through the business. So this is another way of looking at those cycles and the progression points. And the progression is time, and just generally the time and development of the business. So do you remember day one when you started your business? Do you recall how you felt? Anybody like to tell me how they felt?
What the hell have I done now?
You were ahead of yourself. Anyone else?
I think excited.
Excited?
Finally.
Yep.
Finally.
Anyone else? Haroon?
Just excitement. Looking forward to actually building the business from the ground up. Just a sense of optimism, and recognizing that there's going to be a hard road ahead, and
Yep.
we've got to dig in.
Christy? How about you?
Similar to what other people are saying, I'd echo the "what the hell have I gotten myself into" situation. But yeah, excited and great sense of anticipation, fear, quite a
And
lot
how
of
about-
things, in fact.
And how about you, Chris?
Scared, excited, sense of freedom, relief,
You've
joy
worked in a
in
corporate.
many ways. Just getting away from silly leaders as well, being
Yeah.
independent, sense of freedom.
You sound as if you'd worked in a corporate.
A bit of both. Done the corporates, work in corporates now as my clients, but also enjoying the freedom of being independent.
Very good. Thank you. So let me share with you what many thousands of people have shared with me as being how they have experienced the journey. So day one, people feel really inspired. And it's the inspiration that I am actually going to do something, and this is going to be wonderful. And that little germ of an idea that they have that excites them, that gets the business started. Then they start up and they are really excited because all of this is new. This is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. I remember one of the episodes of the Avengers, the 1960s show. Steed gave Emma Peel a gift, which struck me as probably the most exciting, but also the most useless brainchild I've ever heard of, which was a luminous sundial. Now, you can imagine someone being inspired to create a luminous sundial and then excited about how they were going to put it into production. Now, that excitement is closely followed by a period which I call frenetic. It's where actually the excitement begins to fade, but is still there, but suddenly there's an urgency. And people tend to run around doing lots and lots of things. It may be that they're incorporating their company, registering for tax, registering for VAT, setting up a bank account, trying to talk to the first customers, working out what IT they've got to have, getting everything sorted out. So it's one of those situations where people don't know where to look because they've got so many things to do. And that is followed by a feeling that is concern. So you'll notice there's no scale to this time, but what happens is the excitement subsides and people begin to think, well, I've put in all this work and I'm really concerned because I don't know where it's going. Now, I can imagine many of you have experienced this if you are still in the creation phase. If you have not moved beyond that, you'll get stuck. The next point on the cycle is committed. And committed is represented by becoming confident or choosing to be confident. And this is where people say, I'm no longer concerned, or I'm going to choose no longer to be concerned. And for me, the die is cast. I am committed to this. I'm not even considering going back to my old sort of job but it also implies you have to make an investment. So this is where people borrow money from the bank. They take out a mortgage or an additional mortgage or a charge on their house. This is where they take on their first staff, where they invest in their first bit of proper IT, as opposed to the laptop that they managed to get from their previous employer. And whatever it is that commitment that flips the business into growth. And in growth, businesses feel motivated. The business owner feels motivated. The atmosphere is great. I remember joining a company that worked in the King's Road in the 1980s. And the vibe was great. And every Friday, everybody used to pile out of the office and go to the pub together because the atmosphere was so great, the esprit de corps. And then after a period, and this is the motivated period, typically lasts a period of a number of years because it's all about steady incremental growth. But then there is a point at which the company lands its first really large client. This could be the first client that pays $250,000 for the whatever it is you are selling. And suddenly it looks as if you've reached the top of the mountain. Suddenly you find that finding clients isn't a problem. And you're on top of the world. And being in the elated space is absolutely wonderful. It feels as if you've got 15 Christmases come all at once. And in the elated space, typically the behavior of the business owner is that they feel so wonderful that they start to reward themselves for all the things they and their family has gone without for the previous years. And so in the elated space, people tend to spend money. And they tend to spend money on things that actually support their lifestyle. So they've got the new house, the children are in new schools, got the new car, brand new golf clubs in the back of in the boot, and everything's wonderful. And then there is a little pivot point, which I call the turning point, where suddenly they realize they've created a lifestyle they have to be able to afford. And the energy changes and they move into a feeling of frustration. Not least because they now have overheads and a lifestyle they have to be able to afford. But suddenly they start looking at their business and recognizing that their business could have done with the investment of the cash that they've taken out. Now, when a CEO is frustrated, how's everybody else in the business? Has the CEO changed? Or is it just how their sentiments have changed, how they perceive their business and how they deal with others? And that frustration grows to becoming strained. So imagine if you're in that strained space and you've had a drop in sales, say you've hired a new sales manager from your principal competitor who's cost you a lot more than his predecessor. And he comes to you and he says, in order to really make your business hum and get the sales you want, we're going to have to invest in these 3 business shows. How are you going to respond? Once upon a time, if you were motivated, you would have responded, yeah, let's spend the money. In elated, absolutely. But in strained, no, you're already costing me 1.5 times what your predecessor cost. Go away and sell for my business. How does the new sales manager feel? So this is how the compounding effect of the way in which the business leader feels affects everybody in the business. From strained, it goes to disillusioned. And at disillusioned, people start thinking about, I think I want to sell my business. If they want to sell their business, then how much do you think they're likely to get for it? Then they move into the space of exploring. How the hell am I going to get out of this mess? And after exploring, they actually, once they've decided what they're going to do, they become energized and re-energized for the next part of the business, the next part of the life cycle of the business. If they don't do the right things, their business ends up stagnating. And even if it stagnates, it will eventually end up failing if it doesn't fail before then. If the business has done the right things, it will move up to proud. So the CEO will feel proud because everything in the business is working and tickety-boo. And that is followed by seeking, which is, now I've got this working, shall I do it again? Now, this is all great because actually this represents the GPS to tell you where you are in your business cycle. So I'd like each of you just to write down for yourselves what you believe is your prevailing feeling at the moment. And you can also tell by looking at where you have been. But this GPS tells you what's ahead of you. And here I've overlaid the typical, if you're running a 70-30 strategy, run rates for the businesses at these different points. And here are the 5 key recreation drivers that help you to take you from growth up to maturity and through recreation. And you've heard of some of these. So the first is brand. The second is channels to market. The third is how you deploy your resources and your staff. What is the system you use to design how you grow your business? The next one is the abilities of your management team to confidently grow and scale your business. And the final one is how to innovate and build your assets in the business. So I'm now going to move on to the next one, which is multiply, which is about building the multiple of value in your business. So we're running up against time, so I'm going to take you through this quite fast. For every business, there is a business model, which is the horizontal line here, that represents the benchmark for what sort of multiple that type of business can achieve. Typically, if you go to your accountant and you ask them what's your business worth, they will say, it depends. And that's because there are a whole lot of different things, so meaning that they need to think about, that actually means they can't give you a definitive valuation. But if they do, they will go to the typical benchmark or business model for your type of business. Now, below the line here, you have the various tangible things that people look at in due diligence, which is what are the financials, what are the abilities of the management team to sustain the business once the leader is gone, and how well has it managed itself over time through the variable economic conditions, market conditions that it's experienced. And that typically is the exit conversation for the person who's selling their business. Someone coming in and buying a business typically is looking to have a different sort of conversation, which is how can they build on the value of the business as it's been created so far to build a premium of that value and then sell it on. And the four key things here are, has it been scaled? Does it have an effective brand? Has it got an innovation pipeline? And does it have a culture that works and holds the business together? And the company value is typically based on profit or historic profits times a multiple. And whilst it's hard to build one's profits exponentially year on year, it is very possible to build the multiple. And this is where this particular tool comes into play. If we then unpack it a bit, the financials is all about your costs and your revenues and your assets and your liabilities. Now, if you are scored down on due diligence, that could mean that your business is valued down to 0.4 of the business model valuation for your sector. However, if you have focused on building the things that will help you to achieve a premium for your business, in other words, not selling it and allowing somebody else to eat your lunch, your business can achieve 4 times, up to 4 times the business model multiple. And the business model multiple is based on, does the business have the ability to scale? Has it invested in what it means to enable it to be grown and scaled effectively and easily? How effectively has it deployed its resources? How good is client engagement? How good is client retention and the opportunity for repeat business? And what's its portfolio plan? So in summary, I've taken you through a conversation about how to scale your business and which techniques to scale up most effectively. So the scale drivers, as we've discussed, are brand, channels, innovation, bundling, pricing and packaging, physically scaling your business, which means more people, more plant, more space, and market segmentation. If we look at the cycles recreation drivers, they look very similar. But that's because most businesses in the startup and growth phases don't invest sufficiently in developing their brand and their channels and redesigning how they deploy their resources, or building the abilities of their management team, or indeed innovating, until it is really needful for them to do this because their business isn't performing properly. And then compare them with the equity drivers that multiply the value of your equity in your business. Again, brand, channel, innovate, systems, which is all about deployment, and culture. So I hope this has helped you to get clear about which techniques and which tools and which approaches will help you to scale up your businesses most effectively. So I'll just finish with some questions for you. Do you have the tools and techniques to hand to enable you to scale up confidently? So I've been describing and defining a number of different techniques. But do you have the tools and the know-how in your business to do these, to implement them, to apply them? Have you and your team the depth of knowledge to scale up effectively? Do you share a common language about what scale up means and what each of the particular techniques is and how to use them? Most critical is that getting the detail of planning around what you're going to do and when and how. And finally, do you recognize where you are in the business cycle so you can plan for what lies ahead of you? So we'd be delighted to help anyone who can't answer these questions. So I'm sorry I'm 5 minutes over, but we'll move over to the questions and answers. So I am at your pleasure. Who'd like to ask the first question? I'm not sure whether it's a good thing, whether I've stunned you all into silence.
I've got a question for you.
Go ahead.
So there's obviously a lot to take on there. That's quite a detailed presentation you've just given there. Is it dependent on the stage at which the business is at in terms of which things to prioritize, given that productivity is always going to have a cap on it? Clearly some priority decisions are going to have to be made.
Yes. So every business is different. Every business has different priorities. Every business in some ways looks the same in each part of the cycle, but at the same time, they are different because they're led by different people and so on. If you're a business, for instance, that is experiencing challenges around just pure revenue and profitability, you need to focus pretty damn fast on the today strategies, the ones that are going to make your business viable, because without the lifeblood of the cash, your business isn't going anywhere. But I remember working with a construction business that started working with me when they were in the growth phase. The business had been acquired from the father of the managing director, and he'd gone about rebuilding it. But they were making reasonable profits. But he wanted to focus specifically on how to grow his business to enable him to semi-retire from the business and then sell it. And so we built a plan to help him to do precisely that. Interestingly, in terms of scale, he found himself staring into the abyss after the 2008 crash. And he used what he'd learnt about how to scale his business up to wind it back. And in fact, even though he had a whole lot of freelance staff, he decided to let some of them go, but got everybody else in his business, or everybody he was retaining, to go full time. And he scaled his business back, but actually generated greater profits than they'd ever generated in the whole of the lifetime of the business. So the answer is, it is specific to the circumstances of your business. But if you understand the levers and how to use them, it gives you the facility to manage your business effectively and profitably, whatever the situation. I hope that's gone some way to answer the question.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I think from that, you know, as I say, I mean, in summary, just to make sure I've understood what you said, is one is what are your immediate priorities to make sure that the business is a survivable business in terms of, is it on resuscitation or is it actually going somewhere?
Yes.
Using that as the basis to look at, I suppose at that point, once you're at that point, it's a case of reviewing the resources and working productivity is and its run rate so that you can then use that to plan the next stages. But all along, we really want to be building brand equity, which seems to be the highest value lever.
It is. It is. Well observed.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Anyone else? I didn't mean to make this so hard.
I think, Mark, you bring a unique perspective and a unique set of tools to scaling businesses with a different set of language that most people have to think and to chew over and to reflect upon. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights into scaling your business. With everyone's permission, we'd like to communicate with you by email after this meeting to see if there's anything that we can help you with. If you don't wish to engage with us, just say so and we will go away. But if there's anything that has particularly piqued your interest, anything that you thought, actually, I need to talk about that, Mark or I would be delighted to speak with you at some point. Somebody asked about the slides. I'm afraid the slides are very much Mark's IP, so we won't be sharing those. However, we have an article from him on the scale-up process, which will be available, and we will send out the recording to all of you who came today. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for your patience, and I trust that we have inspired you to scale your business. And if there's anybody that you know who should have come, you can share with them the recording, but we will always welcome referrals. So thank you very much indeed.